All right, good morning, everybody. It is now 9:34, and it's my pleasure to bring the meeting to order for the Professional Standards and Teacher Education Board. I appreciate everybody who was able to turn out in person. We have a huge number of people that are online, and I was informed by Kelly that we do have a quorum today, which is good because we have some things to publish today, places to go. So I'm glad everybody is here. Let me be the first to wish you a happy spring break in advance. I know we're all looking forward to that. So anyway, and if you're suffering from allergies, so am I. So if you see me blow my nose and stuff, you'll kind of look away. But they're bad right now. All right, so let's get straight down to business. So we have the call to order, which I just did. Do we have any guests that we need to recognize? I know we have Frank from MSCA. Anybody else? I don't see anybody else out in the audience. All right. All right, we open it up for public comment. Kelly, did we have any public comment today?
We do. We have one person scheduled for public comment, and that is Dory Flynn, representing the Maryland Association of Non-Public Schools, Special Education Schools, facilities. She's going to do it better than me.
All right,
Maybe
Ms. Flynn,
not.
thank you for being here, Ms. Flynn, and you have the floor. Thank you so much for coming.
Good morning, Chair Hornbeck and members of the PSTEB board. As Kelly said, I'm Dory Flynn. I'm the Executive Director of MANSA, the Maryland Association of Non-Public Special Education Facilities. MANSAF was formed in 1975 by 10 special education schools and has grown to 70 special education schools all across Maryland, serving approximately 3,800 publicly funded students. We have over 1,000 teachers and related services staff working at our member schools. We are proud to be your educational partners and colleagues. I first want to thank you for your dedication, your attention to detail, and your professionalism to the field. Navigating through regulations is intricate work, and the outcome of your efforts affects and effects hundreds of teachers and educators. It might be difficult at times to recognize and remember just how important your work is, but I'm here to say thank you and acknowledge the caliber of expertise on this board, which is certainly very impressive, and we want you to know that your work is appreciated. MANSAF would like to offer our support for recent actions taken by the State Board of Education at its March 25th meeting to grant permission to publish amendments to COMAR 13A 120402, allowing both public school systems and approved non-public special education schools to request a temporary professional license for applicants who otherwise meet all the requirements except the 3 credits in special education. We fully recognize the need to have highly qualified individuals working with the most challenged students. However, in the current climate, dealing with the workforce shortages in the field of social work, some individuals might not have those 3 specific credits, but may very well be fully capable and competent and have the skills and proficiency for the position. Many of the social work preparation programs still do not have a designated course in special education. And just doing a quick look at Morgan State University, which requires 60 credits for a master's in social work, when I look at all of their course titles, there didn't seem to be anything that was specific to special education. And I think Bowie State University also didn't have anything specific. So at MANSAF, we've made a very concerted effort to address this for our social workers, because we want to have, we have a very strong desire, obviously, to have qualified staff. So it's especially heightened for social workers. What we did a number of years ago, MANSAF was and is approved by MSDE as an authorized sponsor to offer the Introduction to Special Education for Related Services Providers course for 3 CPDs. We have a senior education professionals that are in our schools who can teach this course. And when we do offer it, we even have public school employees enrolled as well. So the course is approved by the Maryland Board of Social Work Examiners for continuing education, Category 1 and Category 2 hours for those who are renewing their license by the Board of Social Work Examiners. So the amendment is very limited in scope and is to be applicable to social workers who simply by the nature of the higher education program they attended, simply did not have the offer of a special education course. And we don't want to miss out on hiring those individuals who might otherwise be a perfect fit. So I thank you for your consideration. This would be something beneficial to both public and non-public, and you'd be serving and solving a good problem that we've been unfortunately faced with. So thank you.
All right, and thank you, Ms. Flynn. We certainly appreciate that, and that helps inform our work for today as well. So the timeliness is appreciated. Thank you again.
Thank you.
All right, we didn't have any other public comment, correct? All right, thanks again, and thank you one more time for being here. All right, so now we move on to our state board update, and that's with Ms. Oakley. If she's ready.
Hannah, are you online? Can we swap them again?
Yep, we can move that out. All right, so we can move on to legislative update.
And I know I saw Maddie.
Good morning, everyone.
All right, whenever you're ready.
Great. All right. Hi, everyone. Madeline Hauk again. Thank you so much for having me. Last month, we went over 6 different bills, 3 of which crossed over to the opposite house, 3 of which did not. The ones that did not cross over were the Interstate Mobility Compact, the Career Ladder Compensation Bill, and the Career Ladder Classroom Time Bill, which would have changed the collaborative time threshold. So the 3 that did, I'm going to go over and explain the amendments that they have to you, let you know when their hearing dates were or are, and then open up the floor to questions. So the first bill we have was formerly known as the NASDAQ bill. That's Senate Bill 845. It has since been amended in the title to be the Educator Identification Clearinghouse Bill. So this removed the reference to the specific organization of NASDAQ and just generally references the state working with a educator clearinghouse in general. Right now at this course point in time, that really is just NASDAQ, but the idea of this amendment was, what if in the future NASDAQ is no longer an organization? What if in the future there's a better educator clearinghouse that we want to work with? So it more generally references that, and it has MSDE registering and paying for the registration for the individual LEAs. So each LEA will be a member, but MSDE will take care of the responsibility of registering them with NASDAQ and paying for that, which in total is going to cost about $23,000, and we are receiving an appropriation for that. We've been working with legislators on a potential final amendment, and this is actually going to go to a voting session today. So that's the first bill. The second bill is House Bill 986. This was the New Teachers Retention Program bill. The main amendment on this one is that a new teacher is now defined as someone who is taught for 3 years or less, as opposed to 2 years or less. This is now essentially the induction program. So the requirements laid out here can just be moved into the induction program instead of having 2 separate retention programs for our new teachers. And this had a hearing on the 27th. And then last but not least, we have the initial teacher qualification bill. This did not receive any amendments. This is the bill that says that a university or nationally accredited institution can create their own portfolio-based assessment as a way for a teacher to receive their credentials. And this had a hearing yesterday. So those are the 3 bills that we discussed last month that moved over. And I'd love to hear if any of you have any questions.
I had a question. How did the hearing yesterday go that you just referenced? That was on the performance-based assessment, I believe you said.
It was good. Yeah. That was not the bill that received a lot of attention.
Okay. And I mentioned that only because our board has talked a lot about that issue as well. So that should be cleaning that up. So we hope it is. So, all right, great. Any other questions?
Would we? Good
And
morning.
I have one. I don't know if you see me. Good morning. Thank you so much for your report. Would we be able to get a written follow-up, please?
Yes, you'll be receiving a PDF version of my discussion after this.
Thank you so much.
Okay, and that was your question, Dr. Allen. Okay, you were both on the same page at the same time. All right, anybody else?
Yes. Hi, Darren. Karen Yoho.
Sure.
So, and I don't know if this is the appropriate question, but with the 986 6, the induction program, essentially. I'm very worried. I've become very worried with all the cuts with the Department of Education and state. Was there any discussion or anything brought up in the discussion about how counties are going to fund an induction programs?
I think there is some concerns on the funding, to be frank. I think that's the best I can say. But I think that that's probably a general universal experience to a lot of different programs across agencies and across state providers right now, whether it be unfortunately in education, health, what have you.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else? And I'll just acknowledge Dr. Shockley is out today. She's a little under the weather, so I'm doing this by myself. So if I don't happen to see you, make sure you chime in, and my apologies if we get a little out of order. So thank you for your patience with all of that. All right, any other questions? All right, thank you so much for keeping us up to date, as you always do. We'll look forward to seeing you.
Of course, thanks so much. Looking forward to seeing you all in the future, and I'll be sending off the PDF to Kelly to share with you all soon.
Okay, that's wonderful. We'll look forward to it. All right, and let's see. I don't see Dr. Oakley on yet, so I think we'll move on. Oh, are you there? Oh, I didn't see you. Okay, all right, then we'll just move back to that if you're ready. So we'll do the state board update next. And you have a document that also outlines that. It'll be LEA Superintendents, Carrie Wright, and it'll say summary actions taken by State Board of Education. So that's the handout if you're looking for that.
Good morning, everyone. And just to clarify, I am not a doctor, so just Miss Oakley will do. I'm going to walk through the actions that we took for March. And as referenced, you have the summary of actions. So I'm just going to review that and then preview a little bit of what we are taking on in April. So March was a really fun month because it was Arts and Education Month. So we had some incredible, talented youth perform, show off their art. It was just a really fun board meeting. And we're hoping to keep that train going in April because we will be celebrating the month of the young child. So we will be highlighting early childhood education. And I have heard from some of our early childhood folks that we may be getting some art projects from our youngest learners and potentially a performance, which would just be incredible. But from March, the actions that we took, we had a couple of calendar modifications that we granted approval for. We had the two biggest pieces were the version 2.5, I think, was the final version of the math policy, the K-12 math policy, and that was passed out of the board unanimously. It passed out of committee, the Education Policy Committee, unanimously. And then we also adopted a expanded version of the College and Career Readiness Policy to expand pathways for high schoolers to demonstrate by 10th, 11th, or 12th grade that they have met the Blueprints College and Career Readiness standard. So we just added a few additional pathways for students to pursue there. We had a couple of regulations. I think the biggest one or the one that garnered the most attention was the literacy regulation. So this took the literacy policy that we passed last year and built that into regulations. It was a complete repeal and replace of the existing regulations to really focus them around science of reading. And those passed unanimously as well. Actually, I don't know if they passed unanimously. I'd have to go back and look at the voting sheet, but they passed overwhelmingly. We did have related to PSTEB, we had a couple of licensure COMARs that came through. There was lots of discussion on these regulations on the Education Policy Committee, which I cannot speak to. I work on the Transformation and Finance Committee, but would be happy to follow up if any of you have questions about that discussion in the committee. But these regulations deal with, and let me just reference my notes to make sure that I'm getting that correct. These were related to the requirement for specialists and administrators to have a 3-credit special education coursework for initial licensure. We, according to Ms. Meadows, LEAs and non-public schools have really reported difficulty hiring people for these roles because of that 3-credit requirement for special education coursework. So they asked MSDE to expand the temporary professional licensure for these subset of instructors, to give them 2 years to get that 3-credit special education coursework. And so those passed. They were pretty narrowly tailored to just limit the temporary professional license to school social workers. And so that, like I said, passed out and is now permission to publish. And then lastly, we had a pretty unique case come to the state board that it was from a constituent who had reached out asking about asking the local board to cover cost for both the license as well as the criminal background check required specifically for audiologists and speech pathologists. That had a pretty hefty unfunded mandate requirement on local boards. And so we did deny that petition, but it was a pretty unique way to have regulations come to the board. So that's kind of the biggest items from the March board meeting. And then in April, we are having a more in-depth overview of Governor Moore's Feds to Eds program. Ms. Meadows did preview that program for us in March, and this we will have a kind of deeper dive on that in April as the administration has built out more of what that program is going to look like. And then, as I said earlier, it will be the month of the young child, so we will be all ECE, all board meetings. So we are really excited about that. I think that about covers it. The biggest pieces from March and what we're looking for toward in April, but happy to answer any questions.
All right, I'll open it up to any questions the board may have. Ms. Yoho?
Not so much a question, because I was at the meeting on behalf of MABE, and I had the pleasure of hearing Hammond High sing in person. The cameras were not on during that, so the public didn't get to see it. It was thrilling. I mean, their sound was so beautiful that it just gave you chills. So good way to celebrate.
I was really bummed that we weren't able to cast that out to the public, because it was stunning, like chill bumps. I just can't believe that that mature of a sound came from high schoolers.
All right, and Ms. Garland?
Thank you. Thank you, Hannah, so much. And I appreciate the hyperlinks to everything. I just had a question under the following opinions and orders at the end there, with their folks' names versus a school district. Is it typically the name of the individual who is the heart of the suit there, or is it somebody who represents the person?
So I have only seen it as the name of the individual. I think it is oftentimes, because these are administrative, they often don't have external representation. But let me, that is actually a really interesting question that I haven't really thought of. But so let me, don't take my word for that. But I will reach out to our OAG team and ask about that, because that's something I've not thought of before.
Yeah, thanks. And I was just curious. Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, thank you, Ms. Oakley. We appreciate, as always, your work on this, and thank you for tracking all these things.
Thank you all so much.
All right, so our next item on the agenda is the approval of the March minutes. So if you'll kindly find those, take a few minutes to just look over those if you haven't had a chance already. All right, before I entertain a motion to adopt those, is there anything that needs to be changed or amended in those that anybody's seen?
I didn't see in the attendance that Dr. Terrell Shockley is here, so we just want to add her because she was here. I believe she was here last meeting.
Yep. All right, so we'll add her in. Anything else? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the March 6, 2025 meeting minutes of PSTEB with the amendment and change just noted. I need a motion to adopt.
I'll move the minutes. Karen Yoho.
Okay, Karen moves to adopt, seconded by
Second.
Ms. Bacon. All right, any additional discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the minutes are adopted. All right, and now we come to the communications update. The only thing I keep forgetting to mention is don't forget to fill out your financial disclosure notice. That comes by the Ethics Board, and you'll get a notification of that in your email. You should have already gotten it. And I always have a tendency to think, I'll do that later. And then I panic, and I think, oh, I haven't done that yet. I wonder when the due date is. You do. You get that every year. If you're a first-term member on the board, it'll take a little bit more time to fill out. It's mostly just to disclose any financial interest that you might have that may be in conflict of the work this board does. There's a link. You'll set up an account. And then there's a series of fairly easy questions for you to answer. And the nice part is once you file it, they save it, and you can just basically resubmit it if there are no changes, or you go in and make the minor changes so you don't have to do as much work next time. I want to say it's due by the end of the month. Don't hold me to that. I think so, yes?
Karen?
Yep. Yes.
Yeah, hi, Karen Yoho, because I have a note to self, because I have one for my local board. It is April 30th.
April 30th.
Absolutely. And there's actually legislation. We're getting notes from our legal because they're going to look at boards of ed who haven't submitted theirs potentially. So it's kind of can be a big deal. I also wanted to just say on the minutes, does this mean that it's our 500th meeting? Because it was the 499th last time. So I was just curious.
Is it really? I didn't notice that. Well, I guess it is our 500. Well, good on you, Karen, for noticing that. I didn't see that. Wow, we should have a little celebration then afterwards. Well, if I'd known we'd catered better. Well, thanks for pointing that out. Yeah. Oh, and Karen, I love the fact that you have a little Post-it note because I put that on my computer at home, and it's always an annoyance until I get to take it off, and I've actually crossed that off my list. So anyway, if you have any questions about that, you can talk to us, and we'll help you through it. All right, and I did ask that a mileage reimbursement form be put out on the table on paper because sometimes that makes it easier for folks. So if you came in early and you missed that, you might see that on the way out. Anybody else with communications updates? All right, Kelly?
Aaron.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sure.
I missed it. Ms. Carpenter, go ahead.
That's okay. I tried to get my hand up quick enough. I had the opportunity last Friday to attend the Southern Maryland Summit for teacher preparation, hosted by University Systems of Maryland, Calvert County Public Schools, St. Mary's County Public Schools, and Charles County Public Schools. And I just really want to put into the room, it was a great event. It was a really great chance to see some of the stuff that we've approved and worked on as PSTEB going into action. I hope you guys will join me next year. This was their second year doing it, and I really appreciated the invite. I also wanted to just share that I had the opportunity to speak with TAM students, so high school students going through the Teacher Academy of Maryland program. I had the opportunity to speak with an apprentice. So all of those things are happening and rolling, and our LEAs are just super creative and working amazingly with our higher ed collaboration. So I thought that was a really great opportunity to highlight all of the work that we've done. A couple takeaways was making sure that some of our requirements are aligned and not hindering our students. The TAM student I talked to shared about having to retake classes when she gets to college because the class that she's taking in high school doesn't count. It's the same content, but it doesn't quite match up. So just some things to think about as we continue to do this work. And then one of the quotes that stuck with me was that our LEAs are meeting the needs of the candidates that they have. So just kind of keeping in mind how we can value the people, the candidates that are coming into the room, to keep them, to retain them, to help them, valuing if they're coming in with the content, how do we get them the pedagogy? If they're coming in with pedagogy, how do we get them the content? Because we just have such a diverse amount of candidates coming in. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much for those comments. Oh, yep, okay, and Ms. Allen, you had an announcement, and then we'll pivot to Kelly.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to remind everyone that today is the day. MACD is sponsoring a webinar that focuses on conditionally licensed teachers in Maryland, and that's from 4 to 5 p.m. today. So hopefully you received the registration link.
All right, and Kelly?
Good morning. I just wanted to give a quick update on our Feds to Ed program and actually offer, if this board would like, a more robust update during the May meeting. I am scheduled to provide an update to the state board in April, and I'm happy to share that same update here. But for today, learned the other day that our federal public servant web page that we developed on the teachmaryland.gov site has increased the number of hits to our website from an average of 350 a day to 1,000 a day. Wow. Now that that's kind of been promoted in the media, which is fantastic. So one of the things that we have on our website is an area for like recruitment events, resources for individuals that are interested. So just putting it out there to everyone on this board that if you have specific events that you'd like us to highlight on our website, we're happy to do that. Please just contact me and we'll get it up there. We're also working with some institutions of higher education, both at the community college level and the four-year level, that have really showed an interest in going back to what Melissa had shared, meeting candidates where they're at. And how can we either modify existing programs or develop new programs that acknowledge either the content expertise or maybe they have pedagogical experience from being in the classroom as an assistant or a para. How can we use that expertise so that they don't have to repeat unnecessary coursework or experiences? So very in line with the alternative licensure subcommittee that this board has already put together.
All right, wonderful. That's impressive. And that cycles back to what, Melissa, what you were just saying. We have such a diversity of candidate need. I see that, at the college level where I teach as well. But there's such opportunity in that because we have such diversity of student needs. And if we can meet their needs, well, then we have a diverse group of teachers who can then meet a diverse group of students. So there's some opportunity there. So I see that as a plus. But yeah, it's neat how that cycles back to what you just said to us. All right, anything else?
Well, right. Yes. Did we say yes? We'd love Kelly to present on the Feds to Ed. I would.
Oh, I think that was a given. Yes.
Oh, okay, good.
We'd love to have that. Yeah, I didn't formally ask. I just thought, yeah, of course. That sounds great. All right. Anybody else with communications update they'd like to highlight? All right. So then we move on to something that we've had on the agenda, or at least we've talked about for a little bit, the Arts Licensure Work Group update. And that is with Ms. Fitzpatrick. So we're ready when you are. Thank you for being with us.
Good morning, everyone. Oh, I'm a little far. Good morning, everyone. So Great news, our Fine Arts Pathways to Licensure work group wrapped this week. So I will be back in May to give a formal update once we put our recommendation into regulatory language, and so I'll work with Kelly around that. But we had 16 members on the work group, including myself, Dr. Juanita Ashby-Bay, Joseph Smith, who are in the Division of Educator Effectiveness, as well as Lizzie Devereaux, who is the Director of Comprehensive Arts Education, and her coordinator, Mateen Milan, in that office. All of the members work in fine arts, either in advocacy groups, in our institutions of higher ed, and in our 24 LEAs. So we met 3 times. There was overwhelming support for reinstating a form of transcript analysis for our educators, and I want to preface this with just a little bit of data. As you all know, at this time, we have no alternative programs in the state for educators pursuing PK through 12 art, dance, music, and theater. Individuals who graduate with a bachelor's degree at this time, because we don't have any approved in-district programs as well, so the only viable option for them is to pursue a Maryland-approved program, so either post-bac or master's. And so looking at our data just from this school year, we still have around 100 vacancies in the fine arts. And fortunately, only about 7% of fine arts educators hold conditional licenses. So a transcript analysis route is not a direct route to professional licensure, but it provides an opportunity for these educators to come in, and also for us to consider some things that Kelly mentioned, including content expertise and occupational experience. And so similar to the former transcript analysis route, there are some categories or requirements that these educators will have to meet. They would have to meet or demonstrate content knowledge, pedagogical knowledge, and the group felt very strongly about the topics in pedagogy. And so again, I'll present those more formally in our next meeting, as well as meeting the July 1st, 2025 requirement that all educators must meet, which is a performance assessment. So at this time, that's PPAT and EdTPA. PPAT is being retired. But we also have some other options with submitting a year of effective performance after working in a Maryland LEA non-public or state-operated school. So in terms of the content knowledge, we also considered the fact that the majority of the vacancies, as well as our conditionally licensed educators in the fine arts, fall in visual arts. And so we really wanted to consider that many of those educators are working artists or teaching artists, and they work for our nonprofits in the state and advocacy groups. So how can we consider occupational experience and bring those educators in formally and become professionally licensed teachers eventually, because they're already doing the work. We really wanted to see what way we can consider that occupational non-teaching experience to demonstrate content knowledge. So that is an option in that first category of this new transcript analysis route. So again, I'll be back in May to give a more formal update and walk through that recommendation with you all. But if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them now.
All right, I'll open the floor to comments and questions. All right, well, let me extend thanks for all the work that you're doing. It sounds wonderful, and we'll look forward to your next update.
Thank you. Thank you all for having me. Have a great day.
Yep. All right, and then a group that I believe we formed at our last meeting that we're interested in finding out more about, the Alternate Licensure Subcommittee. And Kelly, you're going to walk us through that?
I can. So I just wanted to give a brief update, and certainly for the subcommittee members to chime in for those of you who are here today. We have met on 2 occasions. We're making progress. I think at this point we've kind of nailed down what the subcommittee is comfortable with regards to demonstration of content. What are the multiple ways that we can acknowledge content expertise? And then we are scheduled to meet on the 10th for a 3rd meeting where we're really going to dig into the pedagogy side. So hopefully by the end of the 3rd meeting, we will have a formal recommendation for this group.
All right, and do we anticipate that could probably be ready for our next meeting, yes?
I'd like to put it on there, at least tentatively, and if
Yeah.
worse comes to worse, we can push it a month, but that's what that's our goal.
Okay. Well, that's a lot of work in a short amount of time, so I commend you and the committee members, because getting everybody together for that many meetings, to meet twice in such a short period of time, that's hard to do. So thank you all that are serving on that. We really do appreciate it. All right, the next one we go to is COMAR 13A1206. This is disciplinary action, so I'll give you a second to bring up that document. And you'll see that you got a transmittal that says 13.1206, disciplinary action and denial permission to publish amendments. So you get the transmission, and then of course you get the document, and for anybody looking for it, it looks like this. So I'll give everybody a second to find that. And as I understand this, Kelly and I were talking about this a little bit. You're bringing back to this back to us with some changes in it, and this has already gone through the state board, correct? They voted to publish first. Is that right?
No.
No, they have not. Okay, so it's to us first. Okay, can you walk us through this and discuss any of the changes in it from the last time when we saw it?
Absolutely. So these are another version of the regulations that we discussed both last month and the month previously. And we had heard public comment from MSEA, and there was a lot of concern around, specifically around the language where we broadened the times in which we would flag a record to notify internally that an investigation was being conducted while we paused an application. So I think the board was clear. We went through 2 meetings with the same concerns. So we've stripped that language out, and what we're left with are the amendments where, again, we're changing some terminology just for clarification's sake. We're moving from the term charge to grounds because there was the confusion between criminal charge and what charge means in this instance, and we didn't want to inadvertently, have LEAs be confused about that. And then we've also defined petition because it was not previously called out. And then I will share with you, you're not going to see this in the version that you have because I just made it last night. Sean caught that there were some citations to statute that were incorrect. So there's it's under 03 where we point to family law. It's 03A2B. It cites Family Law Article 5-560 to 5-568. Those have shifted in the code, and that same statute is now 5-550 to 5-559. So I've made that change in a copy last night. I apologize that I couldn't get it to you in time. And then in that same regulation, we noted that it still refers to our division as the Division of Educator Certification and Program Approval. So I've taken the opportunity to change that to Educator Effectiveness because we have changed our name. So those two specific changes you're not going to see in front of you. Again, I apologize, but they have been corrected. And if you grant permission to publish today, they will be included, bless you, with the amendments. So at this point in time, I'll open it up for questions.
All right, any questions? Sean?
I just wanted to add one thing, sorry. Just for clarity's sake, there's also, you'll see on 03 A1B and A2B, the citation of the statutes in both places, and it would be changed in both places, just for clarity. Also, one last thing I caught last night, and I didn't even mention this to Kelly. I think on the same regulation H1, there's a comma after the word identifying that I think. Oh no, I'm sorry. Strike that. Ignore me. That's wrong. The other changes are accurate though.
Okay. Were you ever an English teacher?
Apparently not.
I always do something wrong with a comma. I know when I'm writing something.
I didn't. I looked at it again and just realized it was in a positive, and my old English teacher would be slapping me on the wrist with a ruler if she knew that I didn't see that.
Well, I can't tell you how indebted I am to English teachers for keeping me on the right track with things like that. And thank you for noting those things that were wrong. Since MSEA was one of the groups that offered testimony on this, we've always been asked to take this back to representative groups to get their input. And I did that. MSEA did not have any concerns about this current document now. So we appreciate the revisions, or at least they do, I'm sure. All right, so any questions or comments about 13A1206? All right, and I don't see any. All right, so I will entertain a motion to publish 13A1206, disciplinary action and denial.
Sharon, this is Dr. Taylor, so move.
All right, Dr. Taylor has moved. I need a second.
Second.
All right, the second came from, oh, okay, Dr. Hadley. That was so fast I didn't see it. All right, any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 All right, anyone opposed?
Aye.
All right, anyone opposed? Any abstentions? All right, then the record will show we voted to publish 13A1206, disciplinary action and denial. All right, let's see, let's look at the time. We are at 10:15. All right, so I would say we are ready for a break, and then we'll come back to the next set of publications that we're going to vote on for publication, next set of COMAR. All right, so let's take a break. It is now 10:15. Let's take a break to 10:20. Is that long enough? All right, so we will be breaking until 10:20. All right, we're nearing 10:25. What was 5 minutes? I think I took 10. So anyway, we'll start to make our way back, and in about a minute, we'll start the meeting again. All right, so I'm going to reconvene our meeting, and our next item on the agenda is permission to publish, and we have 3 items here. We have 13A120104, which is issuance of types of licenses. We have 13A120402, which is licenses for specialists, and 13A120502, which is licenses for administrators and supervisors. You have a transmittal memo, and then beneath that, you also have the document that has all 3. So if you want to find those, that's what we're going to be discussing. And Kelly, I'll turn to you to walk us through these 3.
Thank you. So this set of regulations was before this board during our last meeting, and this board granted permission to publish amendments to these regulations. The amendments that this board approved to publish were taken to the State Board of Education during their March 25th meeting, and during that meeting, the State Board of Education amended the amendments that this board recommended. So when that happens, because both boards are for regulations associated with licensure and preparation, both boards do have to agree to promulgate. So when that happened, the State Board of Education essentially reinitiated this process. And so what you see before you today are the amendments in their current form, which is what the State Board of Education recommended. Now, as a reminder, the amendments for these regulations were twofold. So the first was to clarify some language around experience and what type of experience you need to advance to another license. And as I shared previously, there was misinformation around the state, understandably so, given the way the language is currently written, where licensure partners did not realize that you could bring all of your endorsements with you when you move to an advanced license because of the way the language was written. So we have cleaned that up, and so part of these amendments are to change that. And there were no questions from the State Board on that point. What was amended by the State Board was the other reason for these amendments, which is the use of the temporary professional license. This board had granted permission to publish amendments that would allow every specialist and every administrator or supervisor area to have the ability to hold that temporary professional license when they become employed for the sole purpose of getting the 3 semester hours of special education credit that they may not have for initial licensure. The State Board of Education was not comfortable with the broad scope of those amendments. Specifically, they were more interested in focusing on school social workers because that is who individuals have shared the most about the difficulty with hiring school social workers. So what you see before you today, if you turn to 13A1201, I'm sorry, 0402, licenses for specialists, it's the 3rd page. It's the highlighted section in the middle of the page. And now it reads under temporary professional, if an applicant under Regulation 11 of this chapter, that points to the school social worker regulation, has not completed 3 semester hours or obtained 3 state-approved CPD credits in special education coursework, but otherwise meets the requirements for initial licensure, a local school system, state-operated school, or non-public school may request a temporary professional license for that applicant. So rather than allowing this to take place for any specialist or any administrator, it is solely for Regulation 11, which again is the school social worker. So at this point in time, I'm happy to take questions, and then we will be asking this board to grant permission to publish for public comment.
All right, so open it up. I will open it up to the board for questions and comments. All right, so I'm going back in my mind to the concerns that we had when we asked for that extension. And that was mostly because we were worried about the challenges it would produce to capacity. In other words, if we did not grant that temporary provision for administrators and specialists, we were looking at a potential of a loss for, I would say, employment or certification for the licensure for those areas. So this was sort of our way of trying to see if we could stave that off a little bit, considering the current crisis that we're already in with filling these positions. So our concern was this was going to make it worse. And I think if you'll go back and you recall through, we appreciate all the work Kelly did in addressing a lot of those concerns. But to summarize, obviously, the state board did not feel as though it was appropriate to grant that. So that puts us back on us to consider what to do next. So I think if we think through what our options are, we could vote not to publish. They voted to publish. And what happens at that point, Kelly? Because both of our boards do have to be in agreement. So what I want us to do right now is walk through what our options are, because our two boards are seeing this item very differently. So what are some possible routes forward?
Sure.
So let's say we vote to not publish this.
So this board could simply just vote not to publish it and be done with it. Or this board could decide to offer a different amendment for the state board to consider and essentially, again, reinitiate the promulgation process. Because this has already gone to both boards, that would have been multiple times. At that point in time, I would recommend a joint conference committee be identified from both the state board and professional standards board, and there's language in our regulations that speaks to that and how that works, just so that a smaller group can talk about how to move forward rather than a ping pong effect. And then the final option would be for this board to publish what the state board has recommended and see where the public comment takes us. And then at that point in time, as you know, both boards do have to agree to adopt. So at that point in time, either board could make a recommendations to make a substantive change, and that would again reinitiate the promulgation process.
All right. Any questions about that process as Kelly's explained it? All right, and I appreciate that. If we did not vote to publish...
Sorry, Darren, I had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't see you. Go ahead, Nikki.
It's okay. And it's to Kelly. Is it disingenuous for us to say, hey, let's just wait to hear from public comment, but then still come back and hold our same concerns, elevate our same concerns? Is it disingenuous in the process to the public that we're putting this forward just to have significant challenges or potentially significant challenges happen after that process has occurred?
So I think it depends on what the intention is. I think the reason that you would want to publish for public comment is to see if we get comment that supports what this board has discussed anecdotally. So if we hear from employers that there is an issue through public comment that extends past social workers, then I think that's the reason for the public comment, is to consider it and make changes accordingly. And I know that that's what the state board would do too. They would consider that public comment. If we find that we don't receive public comment, then perhaps what we've been discussing wasn't on the right track. So I think that it's not disingenuous as long as we're going to utilize the public comment the way that it should be used.
Right, and as chair, I'm inclined to agree with that, because having had some experience with, conference committees between our two boards, if you form a conference committee when both boards have exactly the same information, they've simply disagreed, you really don't have much of a starting point for any discussion. Everyone's aware of what the conditions are. You both just disagree. If we do vote to publish, even though we disagree with it, but we vote to publish, we open up that period of comment by which we could then take that to the board, and then you've got something to work with Because, my assumption is we'll get public comment out of it. That's what we tried to address in the first place, but we'd be able to take that public comment so it's what we're saying to them is not anecdotal. So that's Nikki, to your question, that's sort of what my thought is. Now, I'm not trying to sway the board one way or the other, but I'm just trying to think what's the best route forward, because I do believe our concerns that we expressed when we sent this to the board were genuine. I don't think we were wrong on that, but this would give us a chance to get data. I'm sorry, Josh.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
My mic.
Yep, you're on.
I just wanted to ask, who are the people that are now not affected by the exemption? Who are the examples of the people that weren't affected by the exemption? So if it's now down to just social workers pursuing, who are the other people that excludes if we make this change?
Sure, I'm happy to answer that. So the other specialists, and I may forget a few because I don't have it in front of me. School counselors, school psychologists, library media specialist, gifted and talented specialist, administrator 1 and 2, superintendent, supervisor of. There are several supervisors of school counseling, supervisors of special education, all of those supervisors, psychometricians. I feel like there's a couple more that I'm probably missing.
Okay, thank you. I was just wondering because I thought it was a really large group, so that's something to think about too.
And a quick question, do we have any data that shows, for all of those other specialists, any information about the programs and if special ed is part of the required coursework? So I know that for social workers, this is the issue. And so I think our priority right now is the social workers. But do we have any data about any of the other kind of higher ed programs and what they're offering?
So I don't have data with regard to any type of out-of-state program. What I can tell you is that in Maryland, for all of our specialist and our administrator preparation programs that are approved through the MSDE, they are required to infuse or require as a prereq that 3 semester hours of special education. So they cannot stamp that transcript as a completion unless that component is included. We have no control over what programs are doing out of the state, so I can't comment on those. School social workers are an exception because we do not approve those. They are approved through, their licenses are through the Department of Health and a different board. So we don't have any oversight through those programs. Now, I will share that at least one program has reached out to us, and one program has, in fact, embedded now that course because they heard the need. But there are certainly others that have not.
All right, any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I will just kind of speaking up and reiterating what Dory said this morning. I am concerned that if we delay this even further, we're going to continue to experience all of the hiring issues, the inability to meet students' needs, especially when it comes to counseling on their IEPs, especially for our non-public students. And I feel that this is primarily a social worker issue. Like I said, we don't have those numbers in front of us. And such a small percentage of social workers actually go into the schools. And so by delaying this further, not providing them with an opportunity to get that temporary professional license, it's only going to limit that pool even more so.
Kelly, can you walk us through to that point? Can you walk us through, if we vote to publish, when will it get published? How long would the window be, and when would it come back to us? Do you have sort of a timeline in your head?
I can give you a tentative timeline.
Yeah, that would be good.
So if you vote permission to publish today, because the state board has reinitiated, this is the second board. So I can immediately provide that information to the individuals who would start that process. And I would say, usually it takes about, I want to say 30 to 60 days to get it into the register, and then the register will have it for 30 days. And then we will schedule accordingly. So as soon as we know when it's scheduled for the register, the very next date of both the state board and the professional standards board meetings, we will get it on the agenda. It will need to go to, which board? Does the initiating board have to be the final, or does it matter?
Typically, it's the initiating board is the final.
Okay, so it will come back to this board first after public comment, and then it will end with the state board. So we're talking 4 months. You can pretty much double the promulgation time when both boards are involved.
Yeah. When will we get, and I know I'm not trying to press you too hard on this, but do you think we'd probably have public comment by August?
Oh, I would hope so.
Will we have it by July?
Let's cross our fingers. I don't know.
Okay. If we had it by July, we would have to have a July meeting. I mean, it's important enough that we need to move on it. Okay. All right. And, you know, I'm not trying to think too far in advance, but one could always publish as it is because at least we have relief for social workers, you know, which I think goes back to Amy's point. And then we could always come through with, based on public comment, we'd like to now add these 2 groups to it and initiate something new at the web. You know, that's a possibility as well, although it'd be better to do it all at once.
Yeah, so.
But do you understand what I'm saying?
I do. So the 2 different options.
If this was something where we really couldn't see
yeah.
eye to eye, we could at least take what we've got here and then attempt to initiate more based on the public comment from that.
That's true, and that would restart the process over. And then the second option would be, you know, let's say that public comment is received and this board feels strongly that it does need to be expanded. You could potentially adopt as is with the intention of immediately beginning to promulgate after everything is finished. So
Yeah.
I think that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I'm assuming we could, you know, those are things we could work out with the joint conference committee after we get public comment, which is the purpose of having that. And for anybody who doesn't know, usually you form several members from this board, they'll meet with several members from the state board, and you begin to try and work out your differences so that you bring back something you know will pass both boards, which is usually a pretty amenable process. We've handled a lot of issues like this through that. All right, well, let me ask this. I just need to get some public opinion opinion of this board before I go forward. Is there anybody on the board right now that would like to express opinions against voting to publish? Because it looks as though what we're kind of leaning toward, based on the discussion, is that we go ahead and publish, get public comment, then use that public comment, which we anticipate to be supportive of our first viewpoint, to initiate a joint conference committee and iron these out. Is there anybody who would like to voice any opposition to going that route? All right, and I'm just doing that because I want to make sure we get all opinions on the table before we decide how to move forward. That's why I'm asking. So now's a good time if you think, oh, there's a problem with that, make sure we know. All right, well then it looks.
Can I ask a quick question?
Oh, yes, please.
Clarifying question.
Yeah, Ms. Hadley.
If there is no public comment, would we still be able to go back and request a joint conference committee? Just say we've thought about this further, or does public comment sort of have to initiate that?
No, it doesn't have to, but I think that Dr. Woodward's question was a good one. At that point, I would question if we were being disingenuous by sending it to public comment.
As far as past precedent in terms of the joint conference committee, that's typically an action done to reconcile the board's different positions before publication in the Maryland Register, at least how it's been done in the past.
Yeah. Not
to say that it couldn't happen after publication in the Maryland Register, but it's generally like a reconciliation between the 2 boards.
All right, so going back to the question then, is there any concern that anyone would like to raise about publishing at this point? Waiting for public comment and then moving from there. Okay, well, then I believe I'm ready to entertain a motion. And Sean, take me through this. Do we need to do each one of these individually, or can we do them all 3? Okay. All right, so I would entertain a motion to publish 13A120104, issuance of types of licenses, 13A120402, licenses for specialists, and 13A120502, licenses for administrators and supervisors. I'd need a motion to publish those.
I make a motion to publish those three. Do you want me to say them?
Nope, I think that's why I said them. I was trying to make it easier for everybody.
Thank you.
All right,
Yes.
so, all right, so
I
Debbie moves that
second.
we
This is
publish.
Dr. Taylor.
Do we have a second? Oh, Dr.
Dr.
Taylor.
Taylor second.
She's always fast on the draw. All right, Dr. Taylor seconds. All right, any additional discussion? All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All right, any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so we have permission to publish those three, and we'll wait to see what we get back. All right, and thank you all for deliberating on that. We all want to do the right thing. We just want to make sure we have capacity to do it with. So I acknowledge the concerns that the State Board had, and I can understand those concerns. All right, so our next part is, we're moving a lot faster. We have data discussion. Kelly, can you walk us through that?
So at the last meeting, I believe that there was a request to just have further discussion based on the presentation that I had provided, the supply and demand presentation. So that's what I had carved out this time for. I will tell you that there are 3 metrics that this board asked for that will be available for the next meeting. They're not ready yet. And as a reminder, those are the percentage of conditionally licensed teachers who move to a professional license, and we're also pulling the same data for resident teachers just because it's similar. Teacher attrition by LEA for the 24-25 school year, and teacher attrition for MBCTs specifically.
Okay, and that data will be available at our next meeting.
Correct.
Okay, so I would say we probably want to make sure we add that to the next meeting. That being said, since we didn't have that, was there any discussion on the data that we got at the previous meeting? That was the PowerPoint presentation that we had. All right, Ms. Allen?
Kelly, that first piece of data that you shared, is that going to be disaggregated by demographics? I think it was, I don't remember.
We can.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Allen. All right, any other questions on that data? All right, so let's set the May agenda. Obviously, we have the data on there, and we have our typical items: public comments, state board update, legislative update, approval of minutes, communications update. All of those standards, of course, will come over. And of course, we'll get an update on the alternative licensure subcommittee's work by then. Okay, we're just looking through anything else we might want to add. Kelly, did you have anything else to add beyond what we were talking about? You might have missed that because I knew you were doing a little discussion.
I was listening.
We said the typical items, and
Yep.
obviously we want the subcommittee update for alternative licensure. The data discussion would be on there.
The arts licensure.
Yes.
And then the feds to ed overview.
Yep, feds to eds.
Yeah, that's what I have noted. I don't think there's any other, because you know we've been bringing corrections to regulations like kind of piecemeal. I don't think there's anything left.
So I don't think we'd have any action items, other than like minutes or things like that. Okay. All right. Can anybody else think of anything else we'd need to add to the future agenda?
There's a chance I'll be bringing back the administrator regulation, although it's probably more likely going to be in June because it's not out yet for public comment. I think it's scheduled to be out next week. So that will be 30 days. No, it's not going to be in May. Apologies. It'll be in June.
Okay. All right. We'll keep that for the distant meeting. All right. Anybody else?
Hey, Darren, it's Nikki Woodward. Just a quick question. I know that, I believe it was, because of the time, I think the change in February. I'm a little thrown off about what meeting it was, but we've had multiple conversations around exit data as well as special education. And I just wasn't sure when or next steps or how more engaged conversations happen around those. Having attended a couple of meetings at LEAs in the last few weeks, I know that these continue to be significant challenges for our districts. So I just wanted to ask what the next steps, or did I misunderstand or our intent around those areas?
No, you didn't misunderstand. In fact, I'd had a conversation with Dr. Shockley, who's not here today, and also with Kelly. We're trying to set up a time so that the three of us could sort of get together and talk about some of those issues and kind of think about what's the purview of the board, what we could do to maybe address any of those issues or needs. So I think that is probably something. I probably should have mentioned that in the communications update, but I think that's kind of what we do. And I just talked to Kelly about us scheduling with that. Dr. Shockley had a couple of other outside things, and so did I, so it kind of prevented us from meeting this before this meeting. But I agree, those were some issues that, yes, we were thinking we need to respond to, especially because we had public comment about it and so forth. And there's a question of, is there anything our board could do to help in the situation? And remember, the purview of our board is limited mostly to teacher prep and certification and so forth. So we have a very narrow scope. But we certainly want to look at anything that is in our power in order to make those situations better for the concerns people brought forward. Does that answer your question? And I can certainly keep you and the rest of the board updated on what we talk about.
It does. Thanks so much.
Sure. Nope, and I'm glad you brought it up because you're absolutely right. All right, anyone else? All right, I don't know how we pulled it off, but we're way ahead of schedule. I'm not going to question it, but we did all of our work, so I think we can adjourn with a good conscience. All right. And part of that, I think, is because of the great organization of Kelly, your staff, and the whole thing. Everything's all lined up, so we just get through it quickly, and everything's sent out, and we get a chance to discuss. All right, so before I call for adjournment, is there anything else that anyone would add for the good of the group or the board?
Darren, I just want to echo what you said about these meetings and how efficient they are, because I'm on other board meetings, and they're not run as efficiently and with great information. I just want to also echo that.
Well, thank you. Kelly and everybody sitting back there at the table, that was directed, I think, at all of you. So take that in. So we offer some applause to that because we finished our work early. All right. Thank you, Sandra, for that. All right. Everyone have a wonderful spring break. Debbie, did you have something to add?
Just want to say, so does that mean that at 500 meetings today, we finally figured out how to be so efficient?
I hope so. All right. Well, that's great. All right. On that note, have a wonderful spring break, and I'll call the meeting adjourned. Goodbye, everybody. Drive carefully or walk carefully to wherever you're going next. Bye-bye. Yeah.